So let's go ahead. Thanks for starting the recording. Hi, I'm Kathy Sipple, and I am the Senior Resilience Coordinator with Earth Charter Indiana. I'm here with my colleague Renee, who you'll meet in the breakout rooms later. And we have been working with Jennifer Birchfield and Kathy Luther primarily from NERC, and there's a whole team of people from NERC behind them as well, which we really appreciate and value all of Team NERC's input. So for those of you who don't know, I think a lot of your faces and names seem pretty familiar, but for anybody who is like brand new to this process and you just happen to be jumping into it, just know that we'll have a breakout session later and you have the choice to stay in the main room with me and I can catch you up on this process. There has been some confusion in the past about what it is that we're doing. And NERC, just want to underscore, does not have the ability to force a climate action plan on any individual, city, town, or county. So what we've been doing is working on building out a framework that we are making available to local governments. And based on their numbers that they derived from their greenhouse gas inventories that we completed last year, they will be able to hopefully match the solutions in this framework template that we are generating. And it will be on them to create their own local climate action plans. And just want to celebrate one success that happened since the last time we were together in November. We found out that we were awarded a climate fellow again from Indiana University for 2023. So this will be our third year having support from Indiana University and their climate fellows. David Clifford is with us today, who is our current climate fellow, and he's just done an awesome job. So we have really benefited from working with him and with IU's program. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I'll let others introduce themselves. Yeah, can we just take a second and do that? Jen and Kathy, do you want to say anything further? Maybe about your roles, like how Earth Charter Indiana is kind of working on the engagement part, and maybe saying a little bit about what NERC's part is in all this.
Well, my name's Kathy, and I'm the environmental director here at NERC, and I've been working on some of the technical aspects. Like what I found is one of my strengths is finding data in weird places to kind of verify the inventory we did, and try to figure out what's actually happening in the region to the best of my ability. So I've been really working on that, and then I'm also been working on putting our future work where we hope to be technical support for local planning, get that budgeted here so we can keep going on my mojo. And
do you want to say anything about like the ICLEI license?
Yes, I have. Yes, we are going to purchase the regional affiliate membership in ICLEI in 2023. So that means that we will be able to keep the license in ClearPath and keep all of the inventories that all of our local municipalities did in ClearPath within our regional umbrella. So, and I believe I can build new ones as well. So, so that way we don't have to have 26 municipalities paying $300 a year. At least for this year or two, I have it covered. It is a $6,500 cost, so it is not, in my world of environmental budgets, not cheap. And I'm not saying we won't have to fundraise it in the future, but for now we got it covered.
Thank you very much for that summary and for obviously
And
doing
then
it. I honestly didn't know it was quite that much, so that's a little bit of a surprise. Yeah.
it's based on our operating budget, which is sort of unfair because there's all this transportation planning money, and I'm like, but I guess we're doing transportation planning. So, and then Jen is my natural resource planner.
Yes,
I don't know.
I help Kathy.
She's doing a lot of the, she's going to be doing a lot of the, she's doing the kind of website design and communication and supporting the outreach and community stuff.
Thank you. And Renee, I know you're having some technical issue before. Are you able to unmute and just say where you're from? I'm not sure if she can or not.
She's
We'll give her a
nodding.
second.
I'm going to turn off my camera. That'll help.
I will just say one last thing from NERC, if I could.
Oh.
I am the one who's kind of managing the contact list for this group. So I just want to make sure that if anyone has had, maybe you didn't see the notifications for this meeting or someone forwarded it to you, go ahead and just email me. I put my email in the chat. I'd be the one to coordinate with if you're having any trouble seeing those. Email me, I put my email in the chat. I'd be the one to coordinate with if you're having any trouble seeing. Apparently I'm having audio issues.
A little bit. Okay, well, anyway, for whoever you didn't get to meet, you'll get to meet in the breakout session. So just to give you a little heads up, we're going to do some presentations, but don't think we're just talking at you. We're just trying to kind of give you information in each of these meetings. I believe this is our fifth or sixth one. Can't remember. We've had them almost monthly since May. I think we skipped a few over the summer, but basically we're trying to parse it out to you to give, people a chance to give input. And again, it will be up to the individual communities to decide which of these things become part of their climate action plan. So we're just trying to do the work of the framework, and then it will go into communities. So communities really are a big part of the success story for this. And I just want to speak to that a little bit. Connie Wachala has been our kind of official representative for this group. And I'm not sure if I saw her pop in today. You'll get a chance to meet her a little bit later. But I wanted to just share a few things that we've been up to. Okay, we're all having some technical issues today. Oh dear. Okay, well, I don't know what happened to my slides. I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay, I'll just give you a verbal recap. I just wanted to thank Michigan City Sustainability Commission. They kicked things off, I'd say, for the citizen involvement last November. I think it was. They hosted a webinar that talked a little bit about how they started their own sustainability commission. It's recorded, and I can share that out in the chat and in the notes. That generated a lot of interest from other communities to say, hey, it looks like Michigan City has really been able to get some wins having that sustainability commission in place. They, along with Gary, were the first two communities who took part in this IU cohort back in 2019. The rest of us joined in last year in 2021. So they're kind of on the leading edge, and we have seen from Michigan City's model and also from Gary having their own, I'm sorry, I know Brenda's here. I can't remember the exact name of the department. I want to say, Sustainable Green. Brenda, if you could put that in chat, what the real name is, that would be awesome.
Office
They
of
both
Sustainability and
you.
Environmental Affairs, yes.
Thank you. That's why I couldn't remember it right off the tip of my tongue. But yeah, so both Gary and Michigan City having those, informed groups of people that, hold the space for this, we've seen as being pretty important to keep the momentum moving forward. So Earth Charter Indiana and NERC are both really in support of helping individual cities, develop these sustainability commissions. If it goes that far, we think that's a great idea. If for whatever reason your mayor, your city or town council isn't quite ready for that, we support these neighborhood groups for sustainability to get to know who are your neighbors that have the skills, that really care about this. And then if at such time there is a sustainability commission, you already know the great candidates who are willing and able to slip into those spots who can help with that. So I think that's and then the last thing is we're very excited. This hasn't been announced officially by Earth Charter Indiana yet, but each year they hold a sustainability, climate leadership summit, and Climate Leadership Summit 8 will be happening in Gary at IUN on September 8th. So this is the first time that it's ever come to our part of the state. And I think it'll be a really great opportunity to bring statewide experts, to our area, and for us to really come together, both citizens and, local municipal leaders, to talk about all these things that we've been, working on, and to hear what they're doing across the state too, and just kind of get some context for where we fit in. So I'm really hopeful that we'll have a lot to celebrate by next September, and very grateful to IUN for being the host. Some of you have put some feelers out there. There's typically a mayor that is the host. And since we're really hosting as a region, I've put the, feelers out there to a couple different mayors. And we'd ideally like to have one from each LaPorte, Porter, and Lake County to kind of co-host for this thing. And I think that's it. So let's see, Jen, can I put that over to you? I was asked to repeat the date. That is September 8th, 2023. It's a Friday. And also it's probably a little early to announce this, but I think IUN is also going to host a screening of Shifting Sands on the Path to Sustainability the evening before. So again, all of this will be hopefully on the website soon as the ink is dry on our commitments. But if you want to sponsor that, if you want to possibly be a speaker at that, I'll put my email in chat and we can talk about that after. Okay, now I will turn it over to you, Jen.
Sorry about that. Okay, so moving on along here, I will just repeat for anyone who may have joined us in the interim. If you would, please, we're asking everyone to just drop your name and affiliation or community in the chat. So that covers community efforts and sustainability. Was there anything else? I know that Connie Wachala, you've been really active. Any other updates on that agenda item of kind of community efforts and sustainability?
Yes, thank you. We are working hard to get a sustainability commission passed in Highland. Thank you to Nancy Moldenhauer, who came to our meeting last week to talk to a study session to talk to our council about the what Michigan City Sustainability Commission has done and how it works and the successes it has had. We are hoping for a vote at the last meeting of the year on Wednesday, December 28th. We'll see what happens then. But I've also been in touch with a few residents in East Chicago, and we were able to meet with Deborah Gritters, who is actually, I see on this call, in the Office of Planning, and then also Richard Morris Rowe, the acting or assistant city attorney. That was a very productive meeting, and we also have those several residents going to planning to go to a city council meeting in East Chicago at the beginning of the year to give the ordinance template to them and to explain, what why they want a sustainability commission in that city. I'm working with Munster residents. They're planning an Earth Day event in April to sign up more people who are who could join their sustainability group. They're just getting that started, and then but they are also interested in going to their council to ask for a sustainability commission once they get more people in their group. I'm meeting with Cherville residents who are going to their councils. I just spoke yesterday to a Porter town of Porter woman who said that she's been in dialogue with her town council about a sustainability commission, and that she's working on that. I'm working with Hammond residents. We haven't done too much in Hammond yet, but at the beginning of the new year, we'll start that up. So I thank Michigan City and Gary for their leadership on sustainability issues. It's really a big help for us in trying to move ahead. Thank you.
And I'll thank you, Connie, because wow, you said a lot. There's a lot going on, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate the leadership that you're taking there. If any other updates on community efforts, sustainability, any other communities who kind of made any progress on a sustainability commission? You're welcome to drop that in the chat or unmute and just update us. Okay, not hearing any then. I see we're doing pretty well on our agenda timing. So let's go ahead and move along though to our next item on the agenda, which is monitoring, reporting, and the plan update with Kathy Luther. And I believe, and we do have David Clifford here as well to help with answering any questions.
Thank you, Jen. I'm unmuted. I need to share my screen. So this is a lot of the, can you guys see a PowerPoint?
Yes.
You'll note in the bottom left-hand portion of the PowerPoint, our new logo, Climate Action, Northwest Indiana. We can. Okay. By NERPC, because we're trying to let people know that we exist. So I have a few topics to talk about, and I'm going to try to pause between them as we go along here. But the first one was monitoring, reporting, and updating, which is kind of how do we think about, how do we keep track of how we're doing, right? A lot of people, nobody really likes to spend a lot of money on a plan and have it sit on a shelf, or a lot of time or a lot of effort. I don't. And as far as going forward, we are required to update our long-range transportation plan every 4 years. Typically, we do a minor update on the 4th year, and then we do a kind of overhaul on the 8th year. So, and I think because transportation is a huge part of our source area, that we can sustainably commit NERC to updating this plan on the same cycle, because I do plan this to be a part of our long-range transportation plan. So what does that mean? I have just a graphic here. So, you know, with planning, you don't want to just have a plan and stop. You have to keep looking at it. So, you know, this is 2022, but we're heading into 23. We hope to finish and adopt this plan in the earlier late spring as we adopt the 2050 plus plan. So then in the second half of 23 all the way through 26, hopefully we'd be implementing. From the regional perspective, you know, the local caps are implementation, as are you know, funding carbon reduction projects through transportation funding, and other things that we hope to have, strategies we hope to have move forward. Then in probably late 25, we would attempt to update the inventory regionally. I have a huge portion of the data is straight from NIPSCO, and I've communicated with them, and they're okay if we ask for it on a 4-year kind of recurring cycle. So then we would find out what are our emissions then, and then we actually have the beginning of a trend line, right? Because we have 2017 as our baseline, and we'll be able to see where we're at in the future years. Now there is the option in ClearPath to use. Google has some data sets for energy use that they update annually, so we can those are modeled. We can run those in the in-between years, but I think it'll be that 4-year cycle that we get the new residential, commercial, and industrial electricity and natural gas numbers, which are big, huge. But the major updates would be 4 years. And then we'll take some time in 26 to kind of analyze what that means. What if we have had reduced emissions, if we've had increasing emissions, what that means, and if we need to change the plan or strengthen strategies or do something else. So, and I'm thinking that this whole regional climate action framework will be 3 parts: the emissions inventory, the climate action plan, which is what we're doing now, which is emission reduction strategies, which in climate world is called mitigation. And then I'm hoping next year, which is, well, we have some in our plan already to do some dig deeper into the vulnerability and adaptation and resilience piece, so that might be a third document on a separate cycle, kind of in the cycle. Um, because as far as implementation, besides transportation projects, we don't have a lot of things that we can do directly here, other than technical support. So does anybody have questions about this slide and the plan going forward? So what are we going to measure besides that? I went back. So I was trying to think, I took a lot of performance measures that I would consider outcomes out of our 2050 and 2040 plans. I think that this is an area that I'm be interested in input. Like outputs are like your bean counting. How many XYZ did you accomplish? So I think like the outputs that we've identified so far are local climate action plans. And then some of the policies or strategies that are implemented at the local level and the regional level. I think outreach is important in education. So we talked about like a speakers bureau or something, I think. And so I have that as an output. And then I have the Sustainability Commission push as an output. I would love feedback on other outputs to track for just that we're moving this action plan framework out. And then I have a lot of other performance measures that influence the outcome. And the ultimate goal outcome, right, is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So that we'll be measuring that as a outcome. But these are a lot of other outcomes that would impact quality of life and impact people. So in our land use performance measures, which land use gets to transportation in a variety of ways. And we started, some of us were talking about this earlier. We are measuring a lot of metrics that have to do with how hard is it for people to not drive their car? You know, can they walk to a trail? Can they walk to a business? Can they walk, or can they get on a bus? And there were some standard distances that we used in our livable centers for walkability. There's a new metric called 15-minute cities, for which these mile distances are a little longer, like 3/4 of a mile. So the actual number of the mile distance might change, but those are all, I think, incremental outcomes. You know, we hope that by building it, they will come, right? If we make it easier to do, more people will do it. So that's something we can track. I figure we will be tracking that about every 4 years when we update our long-range transportation plan. And then we have a few that are not just the whole population, but environmental justice populations, poverty, and disadvantaged groups, so that we're making sure, tracking them, that they have access to the same transportation opportunities. We want to look at population density, because that also drives a lot of the how far away things are and how many people can get things and less driving. And then those are all we will update routinely. Some of these I'm not exactly sure how often like the core habitat work, the land cover gets flown. I can't remember how many years, and then it takes some time to work at it. So some of this I'm not quite sure how often we would be able to update it. And so those are kind of the land use ones. Then these are too tiny to read, I'm aware. These are all of the different transportation performance measures we have in the 2050 plan. Some of them, all these trip times that people spend to do different activities, we collect that in our travel demand survey, which we typically have not done very often because it's very expensive. It's like a $250,000 project, the one we did a few years ago. So I don't know if we can do it more often or if technology will get better that we can figure this out. If any of you got that survey to track where you went and how long it took for a couple days, that was a couple years ago, and you completed it, thank you very much. I think so this is one that's going to be hard for us to update, and it doesn't actually figure into the ClearPath emissions model, but it is a factor influencing, I think, transportation emissions because it's part of congestion and it's part of like how many trips we take to do little things by themselves. The main one that we actually would track more often and every 2 years is vehicle miles traveled, which is the main metric of the emissions model. And then truck travel time reliability is a measure of congestion. How much time are trucks idling on the Borman? And that's a big waste of emissions. So these are all things we'll be tracking anyway. We happen to purchase most of the transit vehicles for the small operators. So right now I know that there's only one operator with low emission vehicles, and that's the transport in the city of LaPorte. They have 7 propane vehicles. But we can eat pretty easily. And Gary has invested in electric vehicles. They're just not running yet. So these numbers will increase. The emission vehicles, periodically we get updates from the BMV on the types of cars and fleet mix we have in our region. And then I'm not sure how we got where the single occupancy vehicle number came from, but I said I wouldn't read those and I did. I'm sorry. And then I have some other ones. Percent of energy produced from non-fossil fuel sources. Some of these are kind of a math exercise. Some of these the DOE might report at the county level. A lot of them are going to be tricky to do at the local government level. Energy equity is the energy cost as a fraction of your income. And some other ones at water use, energy use per capita. That's a good way to compare ourselves to other parts of the country, other parts of the state. POT, public wastewater treatment and landfills, whether are they using the methane or just burning it off. And then our big ultimate one is the tons of greenhouse gas emission reduced and the percent.
Hey Kathy, this is Brenda.
Yes.
There's a program I think that the state has is the I think it's landfill methane gas, some type of volunteer program. Does all communities, do you know if all communities participate in that?
I don't think so. The only place I could find documented that the methane from the landfill was actually being directly sold into the energy market was the Munster landfill.
Okay.
So I would love to talk to you later about where they put that information or how to find that information.
Yeah, so those that volunteer in the program we receive these emails, so maybe I'll just forward you one of the emails.
Yeah, that would be great.
But
that would be great.
It's a volunteer program, but whether the landfill is open or closed, there's a certain amount of methane gases that is being burned off or reused.
Okay.
So just to get that collective of information for Northwest Indiana would be ideal.
Yeah, I do think that that's one area of the inventory that I'm hoping to improve is the whole waste management part. Public treatment, the wastewater treatment plants that use their digester gas for energy. There's a few that do. Michigan City sent me a great document of how much they invested in that and how much it cost and how much they've saved on it, and including energy reduction use. So that is very useful. Yeah.
Kathy,
Yes.
It's Kevin Bryski.
Hi, Kevin.
Waste management at Wheeler Landfill has almost used up all of its methane. It's been generating electricity now since it's been closed for over 20 years. So,
Oh, see, I think that there was a lot of information missed in that sector, and it wasn't my area of expertise. So I'm hoping to improve that with our next update of this inventory. I would love to have any suggestions that people have of other performance measures, or things. Water use. I marked water use just because every gallon of water that's used is treated and pumped around. It's actually treated and pumped around twice. It's pumped around to your house and treated, and then it's treated and pumped around again to your wastewater system. So,
Kathy, I just dropped in the chat also that we could also include the Energy Star certified buildings and plants, which is the registry of the EPA.
great. Yeah, I like that better because I don't think that costs as much money as LEED. So that's good. Thank you. Then I was trying to think of one for composting that doesn't create methane, but I don't know how to, can't figure that out yet. So, any other questions about the monitoring, reporting concept? Oh, I didn't get to reporting yet. Let me finish. So ICLEI recommends using this common reporting framework that is used by the Global Covenant of Mayors. At first I thought, oh no, we have to join another thing, but we don't, because you can report into the CDP network for free. There's like 15,000 companies in there that report. There's 3 modules: climate, forestry, and water security. I thought that was interesting statistics. It's a pretty big network, so it does make sense to report there. So we go into where everybody else is. 96 states and regions reported in 2021, and 1,200 cities, states and regions. Regions were in both places. I don't really know why. I'm doing some research to figure out where we really are supposed to report. But that is free. But a lot of the metrics in there are going to be local metrics. So there's a question, did you do a energy conservation ordinance? Did you do this kind of ordinance? Did you do this did you add any solar panels to your building? Did you do this? So I think that's going to be really hard for NERC staff to necessarily collect. So one of my questions is, if we commit to reporting regionally, how would we get that local data? Would we, or would the local communities who embrace a climate action plan want to report for themselves? So that's something we could talk about, or you guys could talk about in a different group, but it's about a 8 or 10 page survey kind of thing. The CDP wants you to do it. Well, some places it said do it every year, and other places it said do it every other year. I feel like if you're thinking about ordinances being adopted or major changes, maybe every year, I think it'd be interesting to put in how many caps get done every year or adopted. But I think implementation measures, I don't know. One idea I had was at the beginning when I first came here and the trail network was kind of new, Mitch would have an annual meeting called Cornucopia, and everybody with the trail project would come and report the status of their trails and what they accomplished that year and what they hope to do. Maybe that would be a good way, just once a year, a meeting, and tell everybody what they did in their town. That way it's not a onerous report, and it's more like showing off and bragging than it is about bureaucracy. But there might be other ideas. I do know that people are too busy in the local government to in my experience, to fill out a lot of surveys or do things they don't have to do. So, oh, that was the end of that part of the agenda. Oops, why is it going? So, anybody have other questions, or David, did you want to add anything?
No, I think
No?
you did a great job.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there will be a very low appetite for local governments to help fund us to do this reporting and data gathering for them, based on my previous experience. So if there's a desire for us to report, there's going to have to be a lot of voluntary data collection for local communities, or doing their own reporting. It'd be a real shame if a bunch of communities get sustainability commissions and go to a lot of effort and don't report it into the global climate tracking system or carbon tracking system.
I would just say, Kathy,
yeah.
just make it a part of the responsibility of the commission. Yeah, so for us, eventually, and I do desire to have a sustainability commission who will keep our plan alive, make changes, report out to either the council or the mayor or something like that. But there should be a, suggested that the responsibility of data collection, be a part of their duties. That's gathering that data for the prospective departments of the city who, created the ordinance. Created the program.
I think that's a really good idea, Brenda. One of the things I noticed at the Highland, I was watching the Highland council meeting, is one of the things they mentioned is, well, all of our other commissions and boards have a department, like the park board as the park department and the whatever. And that's the thing, is who takes everything from all of them and puts it into a sustainability, something meaningful. So that is, I think, a good role for the sustainability commission or committee or whatever to do. So does anybody else have any?
So the way that our ordinance was established to establish our department, which is air, what is it called? Air pollution control. It has a advisory board that should be a part of that process, which is for us, it's the city council has a committee where we can bring things into. So I think that, each city, most cities don't have an environmental affairs department, but they should find some legislation to help support in that commission, because otherwise it's just a branch or a committee that could live or die.
Yeah, I think that's the idea of the ordinance. But yeah, I think it's great that you have a committee of the council, though, that focuses on your environmental issues. Maybe that could be another option if they don't want to have a commission. But councils are small, so I don't know. Maybe that's something that could go to the discussion group. So I think the next thing on the agenda is the community types. Yes, I did my thing in the right order. And we've talked about this a lot and not really shown you much. So we're getting a lot closer. And this is another area I wanted to show you guys. So we kind of have three different bundles of metrics. And the first one is more demographics, census information, and where I've kind of arbitrarily said the community's expanding, the community's pretty stable, or the community's pretty stressed, because that can influence your priorities a lot. This is from the 2010 to 2020, the difference between those 10 years. This is kind of a map showing where population decreased substantially, where it decreased moderately, where it decreased a tiny bit. I used only 3. I took the people that decreased a tiny bit and increased a tiny bit and thought they were pretty stable given the, I ended up, I think, with the 5% or 6% as stable. It's weird to talk about percents, and that's one of the things, because like in a city like Beverly Shores, like 10 people is a big percent, whereas the same percent in Hammond might be thousands of people. So I wasn't sure if it made sense to do it by percent or by actual people. So what at this point I'm thinking both, and then because ultimately I think each community, when they go to do a climate action plan, should decide for themselves what they're going to do. But this is just to give some idea. So I just looked at basically all the census data, and I kind of put the cities on the left had big population increases percent wise, although if they're in italics, their big percent was less than 100 people. And these communities, Winfield is hidden here, but grew geographically according to the census. There was some wobble in there too. So this was only if it was quarter of a square mile or more change, because some of them shrank and that made no sense to me. These are the communities I thought were mostly stable. I put them on the left if they were growing a little small percent, on the right if they were decreased a small percent. A lot of these are small towns, so again, less than 100 people in italics. And then the significant population decreases were these on the right. Landlocked is sort of, you can't grow geographically because there's other cities all around you. And I wasn't sure I think again, it's up to local government to decide, do they have excess developed land or not? And then the second factor is emission profile. And of the inventories that we did, there were kind of 3 profile types, and these are not exact. I just grabbed some pie charts, but there's some communities that are very residential energy heavy. Some communities are very commercial energy heavy, and some are a lot more balanced. So that just means where do you put your effort? It might be low-hanging fruit. It might be based on your own priorities. It might be so like it wouldn't make sense if you're in Cedar Lake to put as much effort into transportation as into residential energy reduction, because there's so much more emissions there. And then the third way we kind of parsed out the communities was by community character, because there's different practices that would make the most sense. Like a bedroom community is almost all residential. So they would focus on renewables, energy conservation in their residential sector, electric vehicles, maybe some transit, and I think I put trees in all of them because trees are good.
That's right.
Right. We have ex-urban suburbs. Some of those are the ones in that really high growth category. Maybe a little bit more focus on land use planning, and building standards would be good in those communities. The rural towns, maybe they're small, they like it that way. very similar to the bedroom community. Focus on your residential, maybe a little bit of land use. If you really don't want to have sprawl around you, maybe do some looking at that, ways to prevent that. And then you can tell I ran out of icons, but then we have a lot of tracts of unincorporated and agricultural area. We have the urban core and commercial centers, and then we have vacation home communities. Here I would put Beverly Shores and Ogden Dunes and Dune Acres in there. I think one of my questions I need to talk to some other planners about is what to do with someplace like South Haven that is fairly dense. It's unincorporated, but it looks more like a bedroom community than a unincorporated area. There's a few places like that around Wheeler. So, and the census gives them a place and keeps track of their population separately. So we need to finish this out. The strategies are kind of already written in the draft, some of the draft document that David has showed you before, but this is kind of the way I'm thinking to organize the menus. So when you go to a community wants to do their community action plan, we can look at all of these factors in choosing which things to implement and which things to focus on. Does anybody have any, I keep doing that. Any thoughts or questions about that? I'm not sure what detail people were expecting from the community menus. I mean, and I've done this myself. I start getting in the weeds of, I look at a particular town's inventory and I start thinking, oh, they should do this, oh, they should do that. But
Yeah.
that's not really my job, right? That's what you guys need to decide locally. So,
I think I'm just talking too much, but I would just say if we have community type, and then this will really dictate the type of carbon emission goals that we establish, right?
mm-hmm. Right.
And what it should, somewhat discourage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
that's the idea, is to kind of hopefully help narrow the playing field when you get to your community action plan, that you can look at all the stuff we've figured out and already and say, well, I'm not going to put a lot of time into this.
Yeah.
That said, some of the topics, I feel like the solid waste topic was very difficult to get at regionally because of the way the couple of giant solid waste haulers just mix everybody's stuff up. I feel like at the local level, there may be more easier to uncover information. I'm sure somewhere somebody's getting billed by ton for the tipping fee. As finding that would actually get you closer to how much waste you're actually generating. That didn't really come out in the inventory that we did. Because when you look at the regional or county level, they don't really have that so broken down. So that's one area where I think local caps might be able to do some more work themselves, is on that solid waste piece, especially since so many people like to talk about recycling, and recycling is really challenging right now. Do you guys think that this kind of level of detail is what you were expecting, or were you expecting a lot more?
And I'll just say, Brenda, you're never talking too much. You've
No.
one of our communities who has done a lot on this and done a cap. So keep it coming.
Mm-hmm.
So in saying that, just kidding. But the way that we looked at things is that we know that there are a lot of best practices that we can begin to encourage our city departments to do, businesses to do, residents to do, right? So we started out by doing these, it's not a SWOT analysis, but we did kind of that on some of the departments. and with their input, of course. And then we says, okay, if you're lacking, the resources in this area, then we found some best practices, programs, funding opportunities to help you strengthen in that area. And then we considered our department, Office of Sustainability, would be the one that will work with you to help you to improve on those your practices, whether it's educational training, whether it's going after grant monies or rethinking your existing budget. And the big thing was compliance. So if any other department had non-compliances with IDEM or EPA or any of those folks, then we use that as an opportunity to incorporate it, especially if it was air quality, land quality, or water quality. We use that as an opportunity to, make those corrections. So I'm just saying that what you're doing is good, but it should result in something that communities can just kind of like pull from and incorporate it into some of those programs and services into what they're in their plan.
So a lot of the best practices that are going to be in this plan are developed in greater detail in our Sensible Tools document. And we're hoping to put that online shortly, and also to come out and do trainings with communities on some of the Sensible Tools. So yeah, we're trying to provide as much technical support as we can on the actual policies. What does that mean to encourage more, to have more solar? What does that mean to have better land use? We have a lot of support information for that, for the communities. And and also the carbon reduction potential. But that's really, community specific. But I like the department, kind of go department by department thing. Does anybody have any other feedback? Okay. The next thing on the item was to talk a little bit more about the regional sources that we're not anticipating would really go in a community action plan. At this point, I have two, pretty much industrial and the freight rail system, because you can't influence rail companies really at all at the local level, which some of our communities have learned the hard way. So for the industrial sector, we can track from the industry's flight data they report to EPA how much of their greenhouse gas emissions come from purchased electricity or purchased natural gas. If it's purchased electricity, we can apply NIPSCO's plan to those emissions and forecast the reductions from that. We will look at their published corporate plans and can apply those. We can look ahead to see if there's future regulations on that industry that EPA has proposed and put those on. And then the fourth is there's a lot of research going on hydrogen fuels and sequestration of carbon and stripping carbon to get hydrogen. It's, I don't know how we're going to be able to quantify that, but there's a lot of activity in that space right now, because we do have industries that are just high emission industries. So that's sort of the strategy for that. And for the freight rail, there's not a lot of handles on those. At this time, we're going to forecast reduction from the published corporate plans that we have, and show you some examples of how I'm trying to do that. Oops. It, there's so little information at the local level. And it's important to remember, we just had a call with CMAP on transportation vehicle or emission reduction, that even though a diesel engine and a train is a lot of carbon, one train is probably still better than a fleet of trucks. And so here's an example. This is one of our integrated steel mills. I don't know if Kay's here. I was trying not to, all this is public information, but and so in 2017, based on their reporting, they generated 9 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So the plant capacity is 7.5 tons of carbon raw steel a year. I want to see if it's possible to get data on what they actually produced in 2017, because one of the things, most of the corporate sustainability plans and for both the rail companies and the steel mills are based on intensity. So basically, they don't want to get penalized if their production grows. So they're trying to say, we're going to reduce this. So example, this particular mill's plan says they want to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions intensity by 20% by 2030, which means 20% per ton of steel produced. They want to, if they made 100 tons per ton of steel, now they want to have 80 tons per ton of steel by 2030. I just made up those numbers so I could do the math on the fly. But I have not easily been able to find that information. I'm going to talk to some experts about where it might be. It's easy to find the capacity, but did they use that capacity? That would be like the maximum. But I can't compare that. So, but in their 2021 report, they're actually using close to 2 tons of CO2e per ton of raw steel. But that's also corporation wide. It doesn't really give you Gary Works. So, whereas, oops, see, I just gave away their name. But these emissions are from that facility. So it's a huge assumption to assume that the corporation carbon reduction ratio is the same as the local carbon reduction ratio. This is the model that ICLEI told us to use. It maybe there's other ways to do it. I was thinking if they would give us there's tons of steel specifically, then we could calculate a number locally, a local number that we could apply the 20% reduction to. Or if there's another way to find it somewhere on the internet that I don't know. And then the other example I used is the freight rail, which so Genesee & Wyoming is a corporation that owns a lot of small, short rail companies. And so one of the ones they own in Northwest Indiana is the Chicago, Fort Wayne and Eastern, which I think is now Chicago something else. Anyway, it's about 44 miles of track in Northwest Indiana. Their total track miles are 14,000. So the methodology for calculating these emissions are to use the miles. So the corporation reported that for their diesel locomotives, they produced 27 tons per track mile. So that means in Northwest Indiana, it was 1,200 tons per track mile, or total. So then we can look at their adjustments. Their proposed scientific-based target is to reduce their emissions intensity by 37%. So I applied that. So I put I made it emissions intensity by mile of track, which is probably not quite accurate, but in gigajoules, which is the amount of energy used, and figuring they'd have to use the same amount of energy even if they weren't doing diesel. And I came up with that if they reduce the intensity by 37% by 2035, their Northwest Indiana emissions, based on this calculation method, would go down to 528 tons by 2035. This is the way that the track mile ratio is the way that apparently everybody is doing this. Whether it's a great way or not, at least it's comparing apples to apples across the community of people doing this. It was interesting, they put out how much money they're going to invest in idle reduction technology and what they think that'll accomplish. And again, though, this is corporation wide. So the assumptions I made, assumptions from the corporate level to the company level, and the company level to the miles of track level, to the, the idea is to use publicly available information. And then my ideas, the ones I can apply this to are Canadian National, and CSX, and EJ&E. Again, this strategy is not focused on trying to tell the industries what to do from the local government perspective, but just on at least understanding what's happening as we go forward. And also it gives us a place to start. If we if the communities are doing whatever they can, it shows that the industries are trying to do stuff to reduce their emissions, and that if we can, if they maybe the communities can at least support those efforts, if they and I think we should publish that too. So we ran into this with some of the bus projects we've done with South Shore Clean Cities in the past. Like, we were wanting to retrofit school buses with propane heaters. So diesel buses have to warm up for 2 hours or something in the winter before they can go. And the idea of the propane heater is to do that with a lot less emissions and energy than the diesel engine. And the people whose job it was to come in 2 hours early in the winter and turn on the bus and get overtime did not like that plan at all, and kind of submarined it. So, and that makes sense. It's in their individual benefit to get the extra hours. So that's like the kind of in the weeds at the local climate action plan level. You need to understand your community and what could have been done to offset that for people, or to find a way to implement it and give them those same hours somewhere else, or so that's just an example of, I don't know if that's going to happen in the freight locomotives idle like 24/7, the old ones that are still out there. So even replacing old ones with new ones that don't have to idle all the time is a big emission benefit. So that's what I wanted to do today, take a little more time to explain how we were going to approach this. And I don't think anybody really wants to talk about numbers, but I would totally be open to or interested in if I'm missing anything that they can think of, or suggestions. And I think that's what kind of these areas are where we're going to go in the breakout groups, the community types and reporting, and if people have other ideas about industry and freight, or other sources that we should put in at a regional, not a local.
Yep. And with that, not hearing any questions yet, you did kind of transition us, Kathy Luther, to the breakout sessions. Kathy Sipple.
I think I saw Billy unmute. Did you
Oh.
have a question, Billy? I think you're about to speak. No?
No, I was just preparing to go to our breakout room.
Oh, got it.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, no worries. No worries. Okay. Well, since Jen gave me that, okay to move forward. Again, does anybody have questions? We don't want to break you up too soon. Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to open both of the breakout rooms. So there's again going to be community types, the first presentation, or the previous presentation, and then there's going to be a separate discussion group about industry reduction strategy. And if neither one of those speak to you or you have questions about our process, I will remain in the main room. So you don't have to choose a breakout room. You can sit and talk with me about how to find your role in this whole thing. That's kind of a third option. I'll go ahead and open all the rooms, and Kathy and David, I believe, will be in which one, Kathy?
Industry and freight and regional sources.
Yes. Okay. And so for community types, that will be Jennifer Birchfield and Renee. And you'll have what for some of you might be a familiar technology by now. We're going to use Google Jamboards to let people record their input. There is more. I'm hearing some feedback. Is somebody not muted? Okay, yeah, we're going to do a quick demo. Great. So your leader or your scribe will be able to, take notes for you if you'd like, but feel free. You can go beyond page 1 also. Can you? Oh, well, that's all right. There's page 2, 3, 4. If you want to kind of differentiate your type of input, you don't have to wait for the leader to guide you. Just do a brain dump, put your information where you want it, and it will be captured and added to the notes of the whole. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and maybe if a representative from each can kind of stop back in the main room and tell me how you're doing. Otherwise, I'll close this out. We're going to allow, help me out, Jen. We're going to allow, I think we're doing really well on time.
Yeah. I think, Kathy, what we had slated tentatively was to do 25 minutes for the breakout rooms and then 10 minutes to reconvene. I think it's always better to have more time if possible to reconvene and share ideas out. And like you said, we're pretty good on timing. So I defer to you, but I think we have, a good amount of time left.
Sounds good. If you're having really juicy conversations, the last thing we want to do is cut it short. But, and if we finish early, that's okay too. So we appreciate everybody being here. We just want to have somebody who's willing to do a recap of what you talked about in the individual rooms so that will make it to our, collective recording. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms now so you can choose whichever.
And so, Kathy, just to make sure I'm very clear and everyone's very clear. So do we want to tentatively reconvene at 2:35, 2:40? What are you thinking?
I think 2:40 would be good.
2:40? Okay, that'll be the plan, and people can check back in with you to see how it's going.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you don't need that much time, then obviously we don't need to, run down the clock or whatever, but we have plenty of time. So yeah, and if you don't know how to choose a room, you can message me or just unmute and ask me for some help, and I'll get you to whatever room you'd like. The breakout rooms are named, by the topic to hopefully make that a little bit easier. But again, Jen and Renee will be in community types, and Kathy and David will be in the industry reduction strategy.
I do not. Oh, that.
I was answering some questions. I got cut off in the middle of that.
Well, since you were in the middle of
Okay.
something, can we ask
No.
you guys to report out since it's still kind of fresh?
Sure. Is everybody back? Okay.
Yes.
I forget I can't see all 3 pages.
Yep.
So we didn't even get to our so we talked about industrial. Brenda had a lot of good ideas about know the companies in your jurisdiction. some ways that might be outside the regulatory structure to work with them, like their fleets and fuels, and ways to incentivize them. Billy talked about working with the companies in your community. So here, I think, when I started this, when I thought industrial, I thought of the really big ones and a lot of the lakefront ones that I think have regional employment and regional tax benefits. And those ones we pulled out as regional, but maybe there's smaller industries in your town that don't report into the giant EPA flight database, and you could have a relationship with and talk with them about their energy costs or their waste costs and things like that. So so that maybe I should build out more. We should build a little bit more out in the industrial section of strategies for those education strategies and partnering strategies. Also, that even though I'm using all this corporate stuff because it's publicly available, Brenda had really good luck just talking to, Carmoose, the local team there has goals and targets that she could use. We talked about new construction and new building standards for new industries coming in. Again, we're stuck. We can't have more stringent than, but we can incentivize. Brenda said, even if it's not necessarily carbon emissions, you can still talk about sustainability in other ways.
Story
Last-
building. Story building. Yep.
Yes. Can't say too much about story building. And I actually was literally just saying that to Jen the other day, like, I'm a data junkie and not a good storyteller, and so she needs to turn my data into stories.
I have a very good friend that says no data without stories, no stories without data. I think it's a both and, they both
Right.
reinforce, and
Yeah.
you have different kinds of learners and listeners. And if you're missing one or the other, you're going to lose, somebody
Yeah.
for sure.
So, anybody want to add anything that I might have missed?
What I liked hearing from Brenda was a program of demolition, particularly one of steel mills of buildings that are no longer used. And not only do they have great tax savings, but also if the buildings are replaced, structural engineers and architects have really been increasing their game as far as more environmentally friendly structure, more efficient structure. So, we don't want to risk losing employment, but then also we want to improve the environment and our overall appeal for this area. I'll just mention.
And we talked about incentivizing, like no lawns or,
Right. Yeah.
My
Or
favorite.
have more environmentally friendly lawn.
and landscaping. Yeah.
Discussed
Yeah,
quite
no,
a
no
bit.
rock gardens, right?
Can I chime
also
in?
mentioned, Billy mentioned something about bicycles. I believe it was today that LaPorte got recognized as a bronze level bicycle city. Both Hammond and Valparaiso, I think, are already at that. So we have three cities, major cities in the region now, spread across the region that are bicycle cities.
Can I chime in with something related to the landscaping? I forgot to mention with community initiatives. I've also signed up Northwest Indiana as a region to go for the National Wildlife Federation habitat certification. I did that for my own backyard, and that just involves, creating habitat and planting natives, and it's not hard, really. It's not hard to get. And if you've done Shirley Hines Bringing Nature Home, it's very similar. So I'm kind of partnering with them to cross-pollinate, if you will. But we already have 451 points out of 751 points needed to certify as a region. So like every yard counts, but also businesses count, I think 4 or 5 times as much as an individual yard. Schools also count. you know, a bigger amount or in public parks also are a faster way to get there. So if anybody can help me out with that, that would just be, I think, a cool thing that we could do that does have actual, you know, climate benefits, but it's a way that we can be educating and working together while doing something. It's not a terribly expensive thing to do.
Do you know how many, I wonder how many acres of oak savanna that the US Steel has in their property? They have a lot of oak trees. Okay.
We would
You
know
don't
that.
have to
have a-
mention the
We have a
arboretum.
project with Lake Sandy Joe that we're doing some ecosystem services on, and that's going to include that. So it would be cool to get it if we, depending on what we come out with. That's about 4 acres we could include.
Oh, Brenda has a
that's
lot of rain
Before
gardens
that
and stuff too.
warehouse,
Native
yeah.
landscaping.
Lots of rain garden. I would love, hey, we just got our report back from USGS on the city of Garrett's rain garden. It's a scientific investigation. So probably even turning that site into one as well.
You
So we
use
should talk.
pollinator plants and all of those, right? Like
Yes.
mostly, yeah. Yeah. Get Brenda stuff.
Okay, cool. That's
Is there,
great.
Kathy, is there a tabulation of all the sites? Because we have citizens throughout the region that on their own already have pollinator gardens.
Yeah.
We've got park systems that have done extraordinary things. We've got a butterfly park here in Valparaiso. I wonder if it's included as part of this inventory.
Yeah, they're all, I think, different programs, but if you have one, it's generally pretty easy to get the other. So I actually stripped out the names from my database, and Shirley Hines did the same, and we were like sharing. So I would love to talk with you, Kevin, about that, but I just think that would be a great thing. We'd be the first region in the country to get that. So again, it would,
Oh,
you know, we
that'd be
were
cool.
kind of way showers with doing what we're doing right here as a region. So it's just one more thing that we can, you know, give us something to be proud of and
Yeah.
get stuff done.
We
Could-
talked-
Okay, anything
We
else?
talked to Art House in Hammond, Kathy.
Could you send the group information, just email all of us?
Yeah.
That I'm sure everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Send that around.
I'll give it to Jen to put in the notes. It's still kind of in its infancy, but we can definitely get it rolling. So yes, thank you for your interest.
We talked a little bit. I'm sorry, I know it's somebody else's turn, but we talked quite a bit about composting and challenges and advantages and disadvantages. Like, it's good for, it has a lot of resonance with people, but some people don't like it, and it also does generate carbon, and I don't know if you can do it without making methane, and so I just marked that there. It's an area to look at. I know that in our Valpo sustainability volunteer, not a commission, we've talked a lot about food waste. I don't know if Annie's still on here from the
She
Food
had to leave.
Council.
She had to jump
She
off.
had to leave,
That
but
that overlaps with our group. So.
yeah, but I know, like, we talked a lot about food waste, and I know that food waste is considered an industrial way. Like, if you put a food waste composting in, you have to get an industrial permit, a waste permit, and then all the neighbors, you know, nobody wants an industrial waste permit by them. So,
That's an interesting one though, that I've been thinking,
mhm.
the composting one, because like myself, where I live, all of my neighbors burn their leaves and I compost them. And so I'm thinking, I have to believe that I'm doing better by composting them
Yeah.
than burning them. But then, you know,
Right.
there are associated emissions with that too.
Yeah, there's kind of a thing somewhere I read so some types of emissions are considered annual, so they don't really count them in your, like, actually I was shocked to find that the livestock, the waste handling counts, but the actual just livestock ruminant emission are considered like annual, right? They eat grass and then they generate methane, but then I don't know, it was considered to be part of the a cycle. Doesn't contribute to in this particular tool that we were using, if it's a cycle, so if you take your leaves and then compost them and then put them
Put
on
'em
your
back on
yard
cycle.
and they grow back, then that would not really count in the global picture of increasing emissions, because it's just the same emissions going in and out
Okay.
every year.
Thank you. Well, I want to make sure we do give the community.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sometimes you all have anything. No, don't be sorry. You're having a great conversation. Is there anything else though? I don't want to cut you guys short.
Nope, I think that's all.
Can I ask if mulching leaves
Mhm.
has any difference or effect? Because I've always mulched mine.
Yeah, I do too.
Can
I
I
don't know.
just say really quick, leave those
Mhm.
on your ground until spring. Leave them on your ground. Let's normalize the beauty of those crispy leaves crunching under your feet. You can email me if you want to know why.
Fireflies,
Billy-
so many
Billy, would you
things
be-
needed to grow.
Would you be so kind as to email my husband that information? I know it.
And my
I will-
neighbors, my
An awesome
neighbors
fight.
who, if I don't get, they come over and blow my leaves off if I don't do it fast
Yeah.
enough.
It's an ongoing fight.
I think it's an older generational thing.
Mhm.
I have an older neighbor that will leave a rake in my yard, and I've worked very hard on normalizing the word weed, poison, and all those things. And so I will work for wine, Jennifer. If you just want to give me a glass, I'll talk to your husband.
My husband is 2 years older than me, so it is a generational thing.
Woman after my own heart.
There you go. Okay, well, let's see if we can hear from Jen's got the community types up. Jen, are you willing to be the
Yes.
spokesperson?
Yes,
Yeah,
and I
okay.
do apologize. I'll have to run to get kids in about 5 minutes here.
Mm.
But we had a really great conversation. We started out, someone had posted this initial question of how will we, well, two questions really. How will communities be informed that they are expected to create and implement climate action plans? So we addressed that a little bit, just kind of how we envision NERC and Earth Charter Indiana working on that in the coming years, but also just acknowledge that we have a lot of really amazing community leaders, some of whom were in the room or are in the room, who are working with other communities to help them, encourage the formation of sustainability committees, commissions, and climate action planning. Another question that we had here that was kind of tied to that we discussed quite a bit was, are there other incentives besides saving the planet for humanity? And I would say we spent most of the rest of our session kind of discussing that. We talked about quality of life and how that can perhaps be messaged out. I think in the past we've talked about, health, quality of life, flooding. We talked about things like nature, bike trails, parks, accessibility, and the benefits of those to communities. We also talked quite a bit about economic benefits, especially if we're maybe talking to a more conservative town council. There are tangible economic benefits for some of these things that may be the driver. So just, acknowledging that in some of the messaging, not that that's going to make them want to adopt a climate action plan, but, certain things like transitioning their fleets to different, options have real cost savings and economic benefits. We have a lot of other great notes here as well. But I think I'll just open it up to the rest of those who were in my group. Anything else major that I'm missing that we discussed?
Kathy Luther just typed in bond ratings, some consideration for climate readiness, not sure about mitigation. Great point. And Kathy, I'm sorry, I muted you because I could hear you typing, but that's what you're typing. It was all relevant. It was just like loud clicking. Anybody else from that group want to chime
Yes,
in?
we talked about the importance of cost incentives and disincentives, and made the point of specifically waste production. So maybe charging more for bigger garbage pickups. Some people are very good about reducing their waste, and then other people are very shall we say not so careful, and maybe charging more for the amount of waste that is thrown out. Well, at any rate, disincentivizing and incentivizing through costs.
Nancy Moldenhauer also said it's always economic. We've got to keep at the top of our mind that some people want to do it for the right reasons, but even NIPSCO has going green because it's been cost effective. And we all know that everybody wants to save money.
Right. From the industrial perspective, it's always return on investment. It's ROI. Even that came out of the council meeting where Nancy presented. I mean, that was where the light came on for those council members, is, you know, when you started talking about the returns on investment, and that was really motivating. So emphasis on those as well as incentives and disincentives. I think in terms of waste production, for those of us who pay for private waste removal, then that's really the disincentive not to produce more waste. But for people who are on city or town, you know, plants, and they don't feel it in their pockets. But I think ultimately people respond more quickly, even though they may have concerns, obviously, for saving the planet, respond more quickly when something affects them in the pocket.
Great. Thank you. Sounds like a good conversation. We still have a little bit more time that we can hear about the community, but I don't want to end this meeting without thanking David. This may very well be our last time that we get to be with him as a group, because he is staying with us through the end of the semester and he is working very hard to put the finishing touches on this report. I think he's just done a great job. So could we all like maybe unmute or just say, thank you, David? I mean, we were so lucky to get him. He has done an awesome job. He's continuing to do a
Thank you,
great job.
David.
Yeah, he's just been amazing to work with. I know all of you have only gotten to hear him a little bit during these meetings, but behind the scenes, man, this guy is working. He's been working really hard for us. He was supposed to stop, you know, at the end of the semester, and we continued on his stay. And I would love to find him a job in the region when he graduates. So let's keep that in our minds. Maybe we can attract him here and bring his superpowers of climate action planning to the region. But anyway, I know we're almost at time. Anything you'd like to say, David?
No, just it was always, these meetings were always such a nice, I started to really look forward to them because you work on these projects on your own and you're staring at computer screens and reading other reports and reading how these things get done in other places, how they've been done before, and you try to think of how it might work. And you work, you know, I work with Kathy L and Kathy Sipple so much. And then, you know, we bring that information here, and the reception was always so enthusiastic, and there was always just such a spirit of generosity as to how people wanted to build upon what we were doing, and how people were taking it on board and appreciative. And that never went unnoticed for me. I really appreciated that so much, and it really did help motivate me throughout this fall, as you know, the rubber really starts to hit the road with trying to get these sections and getting this whole plan complete. And so knowing that Kathy Sipple, I just remember when we spoke we have our little weekly side sessions, our committee does, and there was at one point where, you know, we emphasized to each other, you know, there's a lot of sort of enthusiasm and hunger in the community for this plan, and it will get used. And so and that was always re-emphasized every time we met as a large stakeholder community. And so really thank you all so much for doing this. You know, I'm not here, I don't get this experience unless there's people in Northwest Indiana that really want to move in the direction of these sort of climate action planning policies. And so thank you all so much.
Thank you. Well, I know we're right at time, but thank you to all of you also who keep showing up for this and giving your input and giving of your time. This is going to be a better plan because of your time invested. So let me just turn it over to Kathy, Luther, and Jen to see if they have any final closing. Kathy, you are muted.
Because I type too loud. My kids tell me I type too loud. Mom, you're beating up the keyboard. No, I just think this was, I think we had a really good discussion in our group. It sounds like both groups did. And I do think that I feel like it's coming together, maybe because, you know, I'm finally writing stuff down that's in my head, but I do really appreciate all the time everybody has spent on this, and I'm really excited about the citizen involvement, because I think that's going to be a huge reason why this actually goes somewhere. So
So
Very
stay
good.
tuned for a report that will be shared where, Kathy, in the full NERC commission?
Yeah, at some point we'll have to, we're gonna ask the commission to adopt this, and so I hope I get to go do a whole dog and pony show.
Good.
Or maybe
So
we
you'll
get to do
definitely
it.
be invited to that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that's our time for
Mhm.
today. But if you have any questions, my email's in chat. I know Jen has put hers in there before, but let us know if you have questions
Mhm.
before you hear from us. And I also, yeah, that's it. So
Okay.
we'll be sending out the notes. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Happy holidays. Celebrate safely.
Bye.
See you
Happy
in the new year.
holidays.